Hello and welcome to the channel. Zach D Productions here, and I'm here for a movie review for you guys. This is actually a movie I wanted to review for a while now. Maybe some of you don't know that, but well, now you do. So I want to talk about the first Iron Man movie, which is just called Iron Man. This came out back in 2008, and this is technically the first MCU movie. Well, that was of course before Spider-Man No Way Home came out, and then we figured out that, hey, it's actually the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man film that's the first MCU movie in this franchise. But when we're just talking about just the MCU movies, then yeah, Iron Man was the first one. So this is the movie that you could say started it all, and this is the movie that basically made history. And you know, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I was just thinking, like, I don't know what they're going to do, like, after this whole MCU thing, like when it's all said and done, which I hope it doesn't ever get to that point. But you know, what's going to happen when they finally reboot the entire, you know, Marvel universe? That's something that I do wonder, because, well, eventually they're going to run out of ideas. So I think it's fair to say that one day they'll just reboot the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. But who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But nonetheless, I am definitely looking forward to the future of the MCU, especially with all the new projects in the works and all of that. But for this video, we're going to talk about Iron Man. And, you know, I really didn't know much about Iron Man, actually, until this movie came out. So I guess you could say I've been an MCU fan since the beginning, since this movie was released. And this was around the time when I was really high on Marvel. I mean, I'm still a Marvel geek to this day, but yeah, I was even a fan then. I was a fanboy, and I actually remember the first time I heard that an Iron Man movie was coming out. It was actually from an elementary school teacher. I was in the 5th grade, and I think one of my teachers, he was some kind of like substitute teacher or something like that. I think he was like a replacement teacher or something like that after the previous teacher had a mental breakdown or something like that. I'm not really sure, but I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent there. But yeah, but I actually heard that an Iron Man movie was coming out thanks to him, thanks to that substitute teacher or whatever, because, well, he was a Marvel fan himself. So yeah, he was the one that told me about it all those years back. So when I heard about it, I was like, yeah, you know, I don't really know much about Iron Man, but I'll check it out because, you know, I like superheroes, you know, because I was especially a big Spider-Man fan at that time, you know, and that was around the time when Spider-Man 3 came out and things like that. So yeah, so I was definitely interested in this Iron Man movie, you know, this superhero known as Iron Man. And of course, you know, around when it came out, I checked it out and I liked it, and I still think it's a good movie to this day. Probably not the best MCU movie, especially compared to everything that's came out since then, but I think the movie holds up decently. Now, there's one thing that I will say about today's MCU movies in comparison to the ones from this time, is that I do feel like a lot of Marvel movies today definitely have a lot more action to them, and that's actually something that I'm glad that they improved upon. And I would say that that is an improvement. They definitely stepped up the action because, well, right away, one of my main complaints with the first Iron Man movie is there's not that many action scenes. And that's always been one of my complaints, even back then with a lot of superhero films, is that they never really had much screen time. Not only the action scenes had a lot of screen time, but also the main character in their superhero uniform. You know, there's not a lot of, you know, Iron Man in his red suit, especially in this film. Now, yes, obviously, that's the suit that he's in the most when we're talking about, you know, the armor that he puts on in this movie. But he has like 3 different armor variants in this movie. Of course, the one where he's in the cave and he has to escape. I mean, that whole scene in general is just really cool when he's using the flamethrower and everything. I mean, that scene's pretty fun to watch and probably one of the main highlights of this movie for sure. Also, the part where he's testing out that silver suit and when he's flying around and stuff, that part's pretty cool. Yeah, definitely some standout moments in this movie for sure. And even at the time, it was very mind-blowing, you know, and at the time it was like something that they never done before. Now, nowadays, you look at these scenes and you're like, yeah, but this is, you know, Iron Man flying around in a suit. Yeah, that's been done several times already at this point. So, yes, looking back at these movies, especially this one, it's not as impressive, especially when you compare it to, once again, the more recent Marvel films, but it still holds up pretty decently, I would say. And the villain in this one is Ironmonger, who is played by Jeff Bridges, and not my favorite of the Iron Man villains, but, you know, he gets the job done for sure. And, of course, Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. I mean, you really can't imagine anyone playing this part besides him. Like, even if you just see Robert Downey, you just even think of Tony Stark. Now, I know that there's other rumors that, you know, there's other variants of Tony Stark, you know, especially with the whole multiverse thing being a thing now. But when it comes to the main Iron Man, the main Tony Stark, you do think of Robert Downey Jr. Would I say that this is the best Iron Man movie? Probably. I would probably say it is the best of the trilogy. The second one is probably the weakest one, but that's not really saying much because I still think the second one's pretty good. The third one's pretty good as well, but the first one I think is probably the best one. Obviously an important movie in the MCU, and it's an instant classic, I would say. So if I were to give this movie a score, I'd probably give it maybe an 8 out of 10. Like I said, you know, I don't think it's the best MCU movie, and you know, when you look at these action scenes that are in this movie now, yes, back in the day, they were very impressive for the time being, but especially nowadays when you compare them to today's Marvel films, they're not going to look as impressive. So maybe if someone who just, you know, discovered Marvel films like yesterday and have watched most of the Marvel films from the last 5 years or so, and then they see this movie, they're probably not going to be as impressed with it. But I think it's kind of one of those cases where you kind of had to be there, if you know what I mean. But I do think it's still a very good movie, so that's my review for Iron Man. Even though I don't think it's one of the best MCU movies, I think it's very good. So, again, I give this movie probably an 8 out of 10. It's a classic. So, there you go. That's my review for it. So, let me know what you think. Have you seen this movie? Feel free to let me know. So, on that note, thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Take care.